because it's just so quiet. He's so quiet. There we go. Hey, Wings. Hey, Jasmine. How are you? Good to see you guys. Happy Friday indeed. 'Tis Friday. It's a beautiful thing. There we go. Alrighty then. I think we got two good stories tonight. Hey Tristas, good to see you over there on the tubes. Hey Peggy, how are you? Buenos tardes, Queen, how are you? Hey Sunshine. Haircut. This is not a haircut. This is I was out working in the garage all day, sweaty as hell, and my hair is just stuck underneath my headband or my headset. But I'm glad you think it looks good, because honestly, yeah, if you were here in person, you probably wouldn't agree. Oh boy, I haven't gotten my haircut in a long time. No worries, Beaver. No worries at all. As long as you don't try to tell me I'm bald, we're good. But I'll take the compliment. I mean, if you think it looks good, I'll take the compliment. I'm not above that. I've got a post coming up probably tomorrow. Another one of my voice actor friends posted a video of them practicing doing a commercial voiceover. And I was like, I should do that. So I did. And then I decided I'm going to do it wrong on purpose. Oh, you know what? I totally forgot about that. I did say I was going to go over there. I don't know if I can. I don't know how to do that. If there's like a way for us to do that. Crap. Hold, please. Damn. Hey, Eddie. How are you, brother? Damn it. I don't know that I can do that. Can I co-host? Can I multi-guest? Boy, it's not letting me do anything. I know, right? Some tech guys when you need one. What? It says viewers not matched. I freaking hate it here. Unbelievable. Nope. Absolutely will not let me do it. Nope. Yeah, see if she can invite me up. This freaking TikTok live studio is a joke. Hey Lorna, how are you? Hold please. Nope. Oh, it's all right, Lorna. You got to take care of yourself first. Boy, it's not even letting me connect to her live on my device. What the hell? Yeah, but it's not letting me go on live with. Nope. Yeah, I would have to shut the live down in order to go over to Rita's live. I would love to do that. That's entirely up, but it is entirely up to you guys. Let me try something here. Just trying to see if I can join someone else's live from my live. Oh, piss off. Oh my god, this freaking thing. I hate TikTok. You are now. Oh my goodness. Okay. This is crap.
You spend hours at your computer.
It won't let me do anything. Well, I'm pretty sure I just killed the live for tonight. What a joke. Okay, so here's the deal for everybody who was here a few minutes ago. One of our community members, Reader, most of you probably know her if you've been here for a while, is currently live right now, and I wanted to go over and support her and take all of you with me, which is something that you can do on every other frickin' platform out there. Except that TikTok is so goddamn disjointed that now I can't, even if I end this live, I can't go get on her live because now it's locked me out. This app makes me want to scream. So I would encourage you to go and find Reader. It's READA space READER, and go watch her live for the next hour or so, because that's when she was planning on being on. I feel awful that I cannot be there, because I wanted to. I don't love the TikTok shop right now, to be completely honest with you, Queen. I think this app is garbage. And I could go on for hours and hours as to why. But the fact is that unless you're willing to play their game, whatever the game is, because they won't tell you what the game is. They won't tell you what the game is. But you got to play it in order to play. But they won't tell you what it is. So, no, I'm not playing their game anymore. I'm going to continue to come live and do my thing. And those of you that want to join me, great. If you don't, that's great. That's fine too. Honestly, I'm hoping that everybody just migrates over to my YouTube channel, because this right now is unsustainable. Yeah, the game is called In Control and you're not. For sure. Yeah. But the thing is, Buford, it's not the money. If it was, they would be throwing people at me left and right, because when they recommend my live to people, the views go through the roof. The follows go through the roof. The gifts go through the roof. I get new super fans, new subscribers. So I literally make them money. But because it's not the way they want you to, they literally put it this thing, oh, you joined this creator support program and we'll teach you how to go live and gain live control. And it's garbage. It is an absolute joke, because nice one, Tange. That ain't happening. And you are blocked. We don't play games here. I'm angry right now because I wanted to go support Rita and I can't, because TikTok has now locked me out of going to anyone else's lives. So right now, so I'm just, they can kiss my ass. So yes, if you're not already following me on YouTube, go ahead and follow me over there, because eventually I have every suspicion that this whole platform is going to collapse in on itself, because they are just dumb. Yeah, she probably isn't seeing it, and it's fine, because you know what? When I'm reading, I don't see a lot of messages myself. So it is hard to be in that zone and reading and not. But yeah, it's and look, right now this live has 57 views and there are 40 people in the room. You can't do that. That people want to be here. I'm just I'm fed up. Absolutely fed up. Make your live visually interesting. Interact with your audience. Go live regularly for more than 25 minutes at a time. I'm live 4 nights a week, 2 hours at a time. I don't think you can get more visually interesting. I think it would be more visually interesting is if I showed less of my face. I mean, Jesus. But no. Yeah, my live recommendation percentage was anywhere from 85 to 95% from March all the way through to the end of June. Right now, it's barely above 70. Why? Don't know. They won't tell you. Did I do something wrong? Don't know. They won't tell you. I get a message that says you may have said something in one of your previous... Okay, well, what did I say? When did I say it? Yes. That's their answer. Yes. Okay. No. It's frustrating. It is absolutely frustrating. What's even more frustrating is that, like, today, because this is the week of the month when all the subscriptions and the super fans and all that stuff get paid out. And Deborah, I say plenty of things that are wrong. Trust me. But I know what you mean. No, and I appreciate that. But it's like, I would love to expand more on this platform because, this month I just got on, they just deposited like almost $100 into my account from subscriptions and super fans and things like that. I would love to expand that. I would love to have more people doing that because this is my livelihood right now. This is all I have. I'm still waiting to hear back about my Snap application. I'm still applying for regular 9-to-5 jobs. Right now, my only source of income is TikTok and my audiobooks, which has been a little light lately too. So I'm not going to lie. So, the fact that I'm looking at next week, if they pay out, I can, I'll be able to like pay one of my bills with it. That's awesome. I would love to do more of that. But I can't because they won't show my live to anybody, because they won't show my lives to people. Why? Don't know. They won't tell me. So, yeah, that's where we're at. And now that this is completely turned into an ass backwards, just gripe fest. Oh, I got 2 more notifications from TikTok. What do they say? It says, post your live highlights. Yeah, let them auto post my live highlights. Why? So they can post highlights of me talking with the song "Poop Comes Out of My Butt" playing over it, because that's what happened the last time I let them auto post my highlights. So yeah, no, TikTok, that's not happening. Yeah, it's like when I open up TikTok Live Studio, it comes up and it says you have more diamonds than 100% of other creators with your following. And what kills me is the fact that they think that's a compliment. And what it really is proof that they've screwed everybody. They're just like, oh, yay, you got more than everybody, more than other people your size. Yeah, no, but that just means you're screwing everybody, not just me. And I got the receipts. I could pull up the spreadsheet and show all the numbers. And, but it's not going to matter. They don't care. They don't care. They are interested in you playing the game that they are interested in you playing the game that they want you to play, not the game at all. It's not some generic thing, and I refuse to pay for promotion. I refuse to. I'm not playing games. I don't play games. That's not what I do. I could, but I'm not going to. That's not why you guys come in here. Frankly, you guys don't come in here to listen to me complain either. So let's stop doing that before I get ahead of myself. And of course, the people over there on YouTube are just patiently waiting for me to shut the hell up and read. So I appreciate you, Wings. I appreciate that. So for any of you that are not following me on YouTube, I encourage you to do so, because this platform is just dying a slow death that is self-inflicted, basically. I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting to get that message that says you've been blocked. You've been banned. Because that's I could post a video and just lay out all the receipts. Nothing that they can argue with, because it's all there. It's their numbers that they've given me. But I won't, because chances are the next day I'll wake up, my account's been banned. Why? Because I told the truth. And they don't like that. Yeah, I know I'm not the only one that they do it to, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating because I enjoy doing this. I enjoy bringing you guys these stories. I enjoy reading to you. I enjoy doing all of these things that we do 4 times a week. They cannot handle the truth. Anyway, I'm going to quit yapping. Timothy, at this point, I'm pretty sure it's a couple of raccoons in a trench coat that run TikTok. I'm glad you do, Deborah. And I enjoy reading to you guys. I really do. I hate when it's like this and I have to get upset because I can't do this right now. I can't, I would rather be here and read stories. I would rather come on and I promise, River Grace, I promise I will start the story and stop complaining. Doing this, I've said this before, doing this 4 nights a week, it gives me life. It helps keep me sane. So that's why I continue to do it. But I want to do it on a platform where I feel appreciated. But, and I feel appreciated by you all. That's the most important thing. So that aside, see, and this is the crazy part. You look at these numbers. There are 52 people in the room right now on 192 views. That's that percentage right there is ridiculous. Out of 196 people, 50 have stayed. You don't get that. That's not, people that don't care about what I'm doing. Anyway, I gotta stop. Because I'm getting all worked up, and I don't want to get all worked up. I don't have enough of my medication to make this okay. That's the other battle I'm fighting right now. I had to switch insurances because I don't have a job, and been fighting with them to get my medications. And I am out of all but 2 of my medications. And for those of you who are in your 50s, you know how frustrating that could be. All but 2 when, you take a bunch. Anyway, so let's get started, because enough of this. And Sunshine, you're right. What am I reading? I have my heart medication, and I have one of my diabetes medications, which is not my insulin. So, yeah, what are you going to do? Anyway. All right. Now that I've completely lost my mind, let's get started, shall we? Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Storytime with UndeadPapa. Tonight, we're spending the evening with Mary Elizabeth Braddon, and with 2 stories about love that refuses to stay buried. Oh, Wings, it's a long story. I will. It's not a matter of getting them covered at this point. It's a matter of which pharmacy I have to go to because it's limited, and it's getting my doctor to refill them. Even though my doctor may not be my doctor anymore because of the switch in the insurance. So, but anyway, that's a story for another night. In our first story, a promise is made that even death will not be enough to break. And in our second, a love that was never returned may prove strong enough to reach back from the other side. These are ghost stories, but they are also stories about memory, remorse, and the strange ways the dead may remain with the living. So wherever you're listening from, dim the lights, sit back and relax, because story time is about to begin. You know what really sucks and what's immoral is for-profit healthcare, but again, story for another night. Our first story tonight is The Cold Embrace. I should probably open that up so I can read it. Well, at least I can click on things tonight. That's a plus. He was an artist. Such things as happen to him happen sometimes to artists. He was a German. Such things as happen to him happen sometimes to Germans. He was young, handsome, studious, enthusiastic, metaphysical, reckless, unbelieving, heartless. And being young, handsome, and eloquent, he was beloved. He was an orphan, under the guardianship of his dead father's brother, his uncle Wilhelm, in whose house he had been brought up from a little child. And she who loved him was his cousin Gertrude, whom he swore he loved in return. Did he love her? Yes, when he first swore it. It soon wore out, this passionate love, how threadbare and wretched a sentiment it became at the last in the selfish heart of the student. But in its golden dawn, when he was only 19 and had just returned from his apprenticeship to a great painter in Antwerp, and they wandered together in the most romantic outskirts of the city at rosy sunset by holy moonlight, or bright and joyous morning. How beautiful a dream. They kept it a secret from Wilhelm, as he has the father's ambition of a wealthy suitor for his only child, a cold and dreary vision beside the lover's dream. So they are betrothed, and standing side by side when the dying sun and the pale rising moon divide the heavens. He puts the betrothal ring upon her finger, the white and tapering ring whose slender shape he knows so well. This ring is a peculiar one, a massive golden serpent, its tail in its mouth, the symbol of eternity. It has been his mother's, and he would know it amongst 1,000. If he were to become blind tomorrow, he could select it from amongst 1,000 by touch alone. He places it on her finger, and they swear to be true to each other forever and ever. Through trouble and danger, sorrow and change, in wealth or poverty, her father must needs to be won to consent to their union by and by, for they were now betrothed, and death alone could part them. But the young student, the scoffer at revelation, yet enthusiastic adorer of the mystical, asks, "Can death part us? I would return to you from the grave, Gertrude. My soul would come back to be near my love, and you, if you died before me, the cold earth would not hold you from me. If you loved me, you would return, and again these fair arms would be clasped around my neck as they are now." But she told him, with a holier light in her deep blue eyes than had ever shone in his, She told him that the dead who die at peace with God are happy in heaven and cannot return to the troubled earth, and that it is only the suicide, the lost wretch on whom sorrowful angels shut the door of paradise, whose unholy spirit haunts the footsteps of the living. I said the word that they're supposed to hate. I guess we'll find out if I get in trouble. The first year of their betrothal is past, and she is alone, for he has gone to Italy on a commission for some rich man to copy Raphael's, Titian's, Guido's in a gallery at Florence. He has gone to win fame, perhaps, but it is not the less bitter. He is gone. Oh, I'm saying all the words. I'm not censoring myself for them anymore, just because they don't care. So why should I? Of course, her father misses his young nephew, who has been a son to him, and he thinks his daughter's sadness no more than a cousin who should feel for a cousin's absence. In the meantime, the weeks and months pass. The lover writes often at first, then seldom, at last not at all. Yeah, crazy mama, I'm a little pissed off tonight, but it is what it is. You know, I do what I gotta do. I'm here for you guys, so that's why I'm here. I'm gonna keep reading, and I love reading, so that's why I'm here. Yeah, that's why I'm here. Also, I can talk to you guys about the book that the audiobook that I just finished. I can't play any of it for you because, oh boy. Also, I don't have the author's permission, but that may soon change. We shall see. How many excuses she invents for him. How many times she goes to the distant little post office to which he is to address his letters. How many times she hopes only to be disappointed. How many times she despairs only to hope again. But real despair comes at last and will not be put off any more. The rich suitor appears on the scene, and her father is determined. She is to marry at once. The wedding day is fixed, the 15th of June. The date seems burned into her brain. The date, written in fire, dances forever before her eyes. The date, shrieked by the Furies, sounds continually in her ears. But there is time yet. It is the middle of May. There is time for a letter to reach him at Florence. There is time for him to come back to Brunswick, to take her away and marry her, in spite of her father, in spite of the whole world. But the days and the weeks fly by, and he does not write. He does not come home. This is indeed despair which usurps her heart and will not be put away. It is the 14th of June. For the last time she goes to the little post office. For the last time she asks the old question, and they give her for the last time the dreary answer, no letter. For the last time, tomorrow is the day appointed for the bridal. Her father will hear no entreaties. Her rich suitor will not listen to her prayers. They will not be put off a day, an hour. Tonight alone is hers, this night, which she may employ as she will. She takes another path than that which leads home. She hurries through some by-streets of the city, out onto a lonely bridge where he and she stood so often in the sunset, watching the rose-colored light glow, fade, and die upon the river. He returns from Florence. He had received her letter. That letter, blotted with tears, entreating, despairing, he had received it, but he loved her no longer. A young Florentine who has sat to him for a model had bewitched his fancy. that fancy which with him stood in place of a heart. And Gertrude had been half forgotten. If she had a rich suitor, good, let her marry him, better for her, better far for himself. He had no wish to fetter himself with a wife. Had he not his art always? His eternal bride, his unchanging mistress? Thus he thought it wiser to delay his journey to Brunswick so that he should arrive when the wedding was over, arrive in time to salute the bride. And the vows, the mystical fancies, the belief in his return, even after death, to the embrace of his beloved, gone out of his life, melted away forever those foolish dreams of his boyhood. So on the 15th of June he enters Brunswick, by that very bridge on which she stood, the stars looking down on her the night before. He strolls across the bridge, and down by the water's edge, a great rough dog at his heels, and the smoke from his short meerschaum pipe curling in blue wreaths, fantastically in the pure morning air. He has his sketchbook under his arm, and, attracted now and then by some object that catches his artist's eye, stops to draw. A few weeds and pebbles on the river's bank, a crag on the opposite shore, a group of pollard willows in the distance. When he is done, he admires his drawing, shuts his sketchbook, empties the ashes from his pipe, refills from his tobacco pouch, sings the refrain of a gay drinking song, calls to his dog, smokes again, and walks on. Suddenly he opens his sketchbook again. This time that which attracts him is a group of figures. But what is it? It is not a funeral, for there are no mourners. It is not a funeral, but a corpse lying on her rude bier, covered with an old sail carried between two bearers. It is not a funeral, for the bearers are fishermen in their everyday garb. About 100 yards from him they rest their burden on a bank. One stands at the head of the bier, the other throws himself down at the foot of it. And thus they form the perfect group. He walks back 2 or 3 paces, selects his point of sight, and begins to sketch a hurried outline. He has finished it before they move. He hears their voices, though he cannot hear their words, and wonders what they can be talking of. Presently he walks on and joins them. "You have a corpse there, my friends," he says. "Yeah, a corpse washed ashore an hour ago." "Drowned?" "Yeah, drowned. Young girl, very handsome." "Suicides are always handsome," says the painter, and then he stands for a little while, idly smoking and meditating, looking at the sharp outline of the corpse and the stiff folds of the rough canvas covering. Life is such a golden holiday for him. Young, ambitious, clever, that it seems as though sorrow and death could have no part in his destiny. At last he says that as this poor suicide is so handsome, he should like to make a sketch of her. He gives the fishermen some money, and they offer to remove the sailcloth that covers her features. No, he will do it himself. He lifts the rough, coarse, wet canvas from her face. What face? The face that shone on the dreams of his foolish boyhood, the face which once was the light of his uncle's home, his cousin Gertrude, his betrothed. He sees as in one glance, while he draws one breath, the rigid features, the marble arms, the hands crossed on the cold bosom, and on the third finger of the left hand, the ring which had been his mother's, the golden serpent, the ring which, if he were to become blind, he could select it from 1,000 others by the touch alone. But he is a genius and a metaphysician. Grief, true grief, is not such for such as he. His first thought is flight. Flight anywhere out of that accursed city, anywhere from the brink of that hideous river, anywhere, anyway, from remorse, anywhere to forget. He is miles on the road that leads away from Brunswick before he knows that he has walked a step. It is only when his dog lies down panting at his feet that he feels how exhausted he is himself, and sits down upon a bank to rest. How the landscape spins round and round before his dazzled eyes while his morning sketch of the two fishermen and the canvas-covered byre glares redly at him out of the twilight. At last, after sitting a long time by the roadside, idly playing with his dog, idly smoking, idly lounging, looking as any idle, light-hearted traveling student might look, yet all the while acting over that morning scene in his burning brain 100 times a minute. At last, he grows a little more composed and tries presently to think of himself as he is apart from his cousin's suicide. Apart from that, he was no worse off than he was yesterday. His genius was not gone. The money he had earned in Florence still lined his pocketbook. He was his own master, free to go whither he would. And while he sits on the roadside, trying to separate himself from the scene of that morning, trying to put away the image of the corpse covered with the damp canvas sail, trying to think of what he should do next, where he should go, to be farthest away from Brunswick and remorse, the old diligence coming rumbling and jingling along, he remembers it. It goes from Brunswick to Aix-la-Chapelle. He whistles to the dog, shouts to the postilion to stop, and springs into the coupe. During the whole evening, through the long night, he does not once close his eyes. He never speaks a word. But when morning dawns, and the other passengers awake and begin to talk to each other, he joins in the conversation. He tells them that he is an artist, that he is going to Cologne and to Antwerp to copy Rubens's and the great picture by Quentin Matisse in the museum. He remembered afterwards that he talked and laughed boisterously, and that when he was talking and laughing loudest, a passenger, older and graver than the rest, opened the window near him and told him to put his head out. He remembered the fresh air blowing in his face, the singing of the birds in his ears, and the flat fields and roadside reeling before his eyes. He remembered this, and then falling in a lifeless heap on the floor of the diligence. If it is a fever that keeps him for 6 long weeks on a bed at a hotel in Aix-la-Chapelle, he gets well, and, accompanied by his dog, starts on foot for Cologne. By this time he is his former self once more. Again the blue smoke from his short meerschaum curls upwards in the morning air. Again he sings some old university drinking song. Again stops here and there, meditating and sketching. He is happy, and has forgotten his cousin, and so on to Cologne. It is by the great cathedral he is standing with his dog at his side. It is night. The bells have just chimed the hour, and the clocks are striking 11. The moonlight shines full upon the magnificent pile, over which the artist's eye wanders, absorbed by the beauty of form. He is not thinking of his drowned cousin, for he has forgotten her, and is happy. Suddenly, something from behind him puts 2 cold arms around his neck and clasps its hands on his breast. And yet there is no one behind him. For on the flags bathed on the broad moon in the broad moonlight there are only two shadows, his own and his dog's. He turns quickly round. There is no one, nothing to be seen in the broad square but himself and his dog, and though he feels, he cannot see the cold arms clasped around his neck. It is not ghostly, this embrace, for it is palpable to the touch. It cannot be real, for it is invisible. He tries to throw off the cold caress. He clasps the hands in his own to tear them asunder and cast them off his neck. He can feel the long, delicate fingers, cold and wet beneath his touch, and on the third finger of the left hand he can feel the ring which was his mother's, the golden serpent, the ring which he has always said he would know among 1,000 by touch alone. He knows it now. His dead cousin's cold arms are around his neck. His dead cousin's wet hands are clasped upon his breast. He asks himself if he is mad. "Up, Leo!" he shouts. "Up, up, boy!" And the Newfoundland leaps to his shoulders. The dog's paws are on the dead hands, and the animal utters a terrific howl and springs away from his master. Brr. Oh, now they're messing with me. Pretty sure of it. Camera just went out. There it is. There's my stupid face again. Can you guys see me? I'm just going to chalk it up to TikTok messing with me. All right, let's continue before they do it again. Doop-a-doop-doop-doo-doo. The student stands in the moonlight, the dead arms around his neck, and the dog at a little distance, moaning piteously. Presently, a watchman, alarmed by the howling of the dog, comes into the square to see what is wrong. In a breath, the cold arms are gone. He takes the watchman home to the hotel with him and gives him money. In his gratitude, he could have given the man half his little fortune. Will it ever come to him again, this embrace of the dead? Oh. He tries never to be alone. He makes 100 acquaintances and shares the chamber of another student. He starts up as if he is left by himself in the public room of the inn where he is staying and runs into the street. People notice his strange actions and begin to think that he is mad. But in spite of it all, he is alone once more. For one night, the public room being empty for a moment, when on some idle pretense he strolls into the street. The street is empty too. And for the second time he feels the cold arms around his neck, and for the second time when he calls his dog, the animal shrinks away from him with a piteous howl. After this he leaves Cologne, still traveling on foot. Of necessity now, for his money is getting low, he joins traveling hawkers. He walks side by side with laborers. He talks to every foot passenger he falls in with, and tries from morning till night to get company on the road. At night he sleeps by the fire in the kitchen of the inn at which he stops. But do what he will, he is often alone, and it is now a common thing for him to feel the cold arms around his neck. Many months have passed since his cousin's death. Autumn Winter, early spring, his money is nearly gone, his health is utterly broken, he is the shadow of his former self, and he is getting nearer to Paris. He will reach that city at the time of the carnival. To this he looks forward. In Paris, in carnival time, he need never surely be alone. Never feel that deadly caress. He may even recover his lost gaiety, his lost health. Once more resume his profession, once more earn fame and money by his art. How hard he tries to get over the distance that divides him from Paris, while day by day he grows weaker, and his step slower and more heavy. But there is an end at last. The long, dreary roads are past. There is Paris. This is Paris, which he enters for the first time. Paris, of which he has dreamed so much. Paris, whose million voices are to exercise his phantom. To him tonight, Paris seems one vast chaos of lights, music, and confusion. Lights which dance before his eyes and will not be still. Music that rings in his ears and deafens him. Confusion which makes his head whirl round and round. But in spite of it all, he finds the opera house where there is a masked ball. He has enough money left to buy a ticket of admission and to hire a domino to throw over his shabby dress. It seems only a moment after his entering the gates of Paris that he is in the very midst of all the wild gaiety of the opera house ball. No more darkness, no more loneliness, but a mad crowd shouting and dancing, and a lovely débardeuse hanging on his arm. The boisterous gaiety he feels surely is his old light-heartedness come back. He hears the people round him talking of the outrageous conduct of some drunken student, and it is to him they point when they say this. To him who has not moistened his lips since yesterday at noon, for even now he will not drink, though his lips are parched, and his throat burning. He cannot drink. His voice is thick and hoarse, and his utterance indistinct, but still this must be his old light-heartedness come back that makes him so wildly gay. The little débardeuse is wearied out. Her arm rests on his shoulder heavier than lead. The other dancers, one by one, drop off. The lights in the chandeliers, one by one, die out. The decorations look pale and shadowy in that dim light which is neither night nor day. A faint glimmer from the dying lamps, a pale streak of cold gray light from the newborn day, creeping in through half-opened shutters. And by this light the bright-eyed débardeuse fades sadly. He looks her in the face. How the brightness of her eyes dies out. Again he looks her in the face. How white that face has grown. Again. And now it is the shadow of a face alone that looks in his. Again, and they are gone. The bright eyes, the face, the shadow of the face. He is alone. Alone in that vast saloon. Alone, and in the terrible silence, he hears the echoes of his own footsteps in that dismal dance which has no music. No music but the beating within his breast. When the cold arms are around his neck, they whirl him around. They will not be flung off or cast away. He can no more escape from their icy grasp than he can escape from death. He looks behind him. There is nothing but himself in the great empty sail. But he can feel, cold, death-like, but oh, how palpable the long, slender fingers and the ring which was his mother's. He tries to shout, but he has no power in his burning throat. The silence of the place is only broken by the echoes of his own footsteps in the dance from which he cannot extricate himself. Who says he has no partner? The cold hands are clasped on his breast, and now he does not shun their caress. No, one more polka, if he drops down dead. The lights are all out, and half an hour after, the gendarme come in with a lantern to see that the house is empty. They are followed by a great dog that they have found seated howling on the steps of the theater. Near the principal entrance, they stumble over the body of a student who has died from want of food, exhaustion, and the breaking of a blood vessel. Dun, dun, dun. So what did you guys think of that one? It's always nice to read something that is so well written that it just flows. I mean, just flows. The author is Mary Elizabeth Braddon. She is a Victorian writer. I'm trying to remember if Cold Embrace. I'm trying to remember when that was written. Gilby. Yes. Let's see. So Mary Elizabeth Braddon was born in 1835, passed away in 1915. Let's see. It was first published on October 28th of 1860. Full of Jim Jams. Yay! Thank you, Nurse. It's one of those times where it was. I think part of it is because I got so worked up, but at the beginning, but it helps when the story is just so the language just kind of flows on the page, and it just works so well when I'm in the zone and narrating. So I appreciate you noticing that. Thank you. But yeah, that is one that I'm going to be doing a fully produced audiobook for my Thank you. Yeah, Poe is another one. And I love as much as overdone as the Telltale Heart is, I love reading that story because he is so batshit crazy by the end of it. But yeah, the Cold Embrace is going to be one that I'm going to be doing a fully produced audiobook for my YouTube channel. Yeah, I said YouTube. What are you going to do about it, TikTok? Hey, Marcy, how are you? Good to see you. Alrighty then. So, in the Cold Embrace, love becomes something that cannot be escaped. A promise made lightly returns with weight, and a man who believed he could simply walk away discovers that some vows are not so easily forgotten. My name on Audible is Jeremy Thompson. The Cask of The Cask of Amontillado. I love it's a great. I've done. Let's see. I have not done that one live. I've recorded it, but then found out that I was mispronouncing some words, so I scratched it, and I've got to redo it. But of Poe's stuff, I have done live. I've done Telltale Heart, obviously The Raven, which we did the other night, and yeah, so it's good stuff. It's all good stuff. But no, River Grace, my name on Audible is Jeremy Thompson. My name on all of my other social medias is also UndeadPapa. So yeah, you can find me there. But I am working on finishing up my website so that people can find some of the books that I've done. Nope, definitely not me. Oh, thank you, Dadam. Yeah, I'm going to be starting the second story here in just a moment. If you want to, River Grace, if you want to find a book that I've done that I'm actually very proud of, it is called Bane Birth. It is BANEBIRTH, all one word. It is a wonderful book. The author is actually here on TikTok. His name is Gabriel J. Smith. Great guy. I cannot wait to work with him on the second book. He actually just posted a couple of, if you check my stories, he actually just posted a couple of videos related to the book and the audiobook. So yeah, it's a fantastic read. It's a great book. And I do have some other stuff coming up. There is a spicy one coming up that should be coming up by the end of the month. Awesome. I'm glad you, please let me know what you think. And, like I said, Gabe is here on TikTok as well. So and he's a great guy. He's a great guy. I really loved working with him. So I read, so the other night, Wednesday, yeah, I read a couple of chapters from a book that I'm working on. So, Ponder Heart by you. I'll have to look that one up, Jasmine. But yeah, I do have my own writing that I do. If you go over onto my YouTube channel, I'm going to say it out loud. There is a playlist there called Whispered Legends, which is an audio series that I did last year and early this year. And I'm working on season 2. That is all short original stories, some based on cryptids. I did one involving a Wendigo. I did one that was a cross between Pinocchio and Frankenstein. One that was a haunted house story, one that was a little girl missing in the woods, and another one that was based on the Jersey Devil. And I did the last episode of last season was a beautiful, I think, beautiful werewolf story that is an allegory for dealing with a loved one that has Alzheimer's. So it's a beautiful story, and I'm really, really proud of it. But I do have a couple of other Whispered Legends coming up very soon. One called the Other Side of the Glass, and another one called Beneath the Ice. Beneath the Ice takes place in Antarctica at a recently unearthed Soviet research station, and Other Side of the Glass takes place in the apartment of an old building, and a young man who discovers that he is not alone in his apartment. Thank you so much. Yeah, as soon as I've got to go through, I noticed a couple things while I was reading it, so I do want to go through and re-edit it again, and I am talking to a publisher about serializing it for their magazine, so we shall see. But there will be more of it coming, I promise. All right, so our next story takes the idea of love after death in a very different direction. This time, the love is quiet, steady, unreturned, but never false. Hi, Nightshade. Welcome in. Good to see you. And when death comes, what remains behind is not vengeance, but a final attempt to be heard. This is John Granger, again by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. Okay. Now, this was originally published in 1870. Chapter 1. Then there is no hope for me, Susie. The speaker was a stalwart young fellow of the yeoman class, with a grave, earnest face and a frank, fearless manner. He was standing by the open window of a pleasant farmhouse parlor by the side of a bright-eyed girl who was leaning with folded arms upon the broad window-sill, looking shyly downward as he talked to her. I didn't fix my reading copy here. There we go. Is there no chance, Susie? None? Is it all over between us? If you mean that I shall ever cease to think of you as one of the best friends I have in this world, John, no, she answered. Or that I shall ever cease to look up to you as the noblest and truest of men, no, John, 100 times no. But I mean something more than that, Susie, and you know it as well as I do. I want you to be my wife by and by. I'm not in a hurry, you know, my dear. I can bide my time. You're very young yet, and may you scarcely know your own mind. I can wait, Susie. My love will stand wear and tear. Let me have the hope of winning you by and by. I'm not a poor man at this present time, you know. Susie, there are 3,000 pounds of old Uncle Tidman's on deposit in my name in Hillborough Bank. I've been a lucky fellow in having an industrious father and a rich bachelor uncle, and with this chance of you for my wife, a few years would make me a rich man. That can never be, John. I know how proud I ought to be that you should think of me like this. I am not worthy of so much love. It isn't that I don't appreciate your merits, John, but there is someone else, eh, Susie? Yes, John, she faltered in a very low voice and with a vivid blush on her drooping face. Someone who has asked you to be his wife. No, John, but I think he likes me a little, and... Here she stopped suddenly, finding the sentence difficult to continue, John Granger having a long, heavy sigh, and stood for some minutes looking at the ground in dead silence. I think I can guess who it is, he said at last. Robert Ashley. Eh, Susie? The blush grew deeper, and the girl's silence was a sufficient answer. Well, he's a fine, handsome young fellow, and more likely to take a pretty girl's fancy than such a blunt, plain-spoken chap as I am. And he's a good fellow enough, as far as I know. I've nothing to say against him, Susie. But there's one man in the world I should have liked to warn you against, Susan, if I'd thought there was a shadow of a chance you'd ever listen to any love-making of his. Who is that, John? Your cousin, Stephen Price. You needn't fear that I should ever listen to him, John. There's little love lost between Stephen and me. Isn't there? I've heard him swear that he'd have you for his wife some day. I don't like him, my dear, and I don't trust him either. It isn't only that he bears a bad character uptown as a dissipated, pleasure-loving spendthrift. There's something more than that, something below the surface that I can't find words for. I know that he's I know that he's very clever. Folks say that Mr. Valere, the lawyer, looks over all his faults on account of his cleverness, and that he never had a clerk to serve him so well as Stephen does. But cleverness and honesty don't always go together, Susie, and I fear that cousin of yours will come to a bad end. Susan Lorton did not attempt to dispute the justice of this opinion. Stephen Price was no favorite of hers, in spite of those good looks and that showy cleverness which had won him a certain amount of popularity elsewhere. John Granger lingered at the sunny window, where the scent of 1,000 roses came floating in upon the warm summer air. Scent of 1,000 roses. He lingered as if loath to go and make an end of that interview, though the end must come, and the last words must needs be spoken very soon. Well, Susie, he said presently, a man must teach himself to bear these things, even when they seem to break his life up somehow, and make an end of every hope and dream he ever had. I can tell you how I've loved you, my dear. I shall love you to the end of my days. Bob Ashley is a good fellow, and God grant he may make you a good husband. But I don't believe it's in him to love you as I do, Susan. He takes life pleasantly and has his mind full of getting on in the world, you see, and he has father and mother and sisters to care for. I've got no one but you to love, Susan. I've stood quite alone in the world ever since I was a boy, and you've been all the world to me. It's bitter to bear, my dear, but it can't be helped. Don't cry, Susan, darling. I am a selfish brute to talk like this and bring tears into those pretty eyes. Can't be helped. Providence orders these things, you see, and we must bear them quietly. Goodbye, dear. He gave the girl his big, honest hand. She took it in both her own, bent over it, and kissed it tearfully. You'll never know how truly I respect you, John, she said. But don't say goodbye like that. We are to be friends always, aren't we? Friends always? Yes, my dear, but friends at a distance. There's some things I couldn't bear to see. I can wish for your happiness and pray for it, honestly, but I couldn't stop at Friar's Gate to see you Robert Ashley's wife. My lease of the old farm is out. I'm to call on Mr. Valere this afternoon to talk about renewing it. I fancied you'd be mistress of the old dear place, Susie. It's been my dream for the last 3 years. I couldn't bear the look of the empty rooms now that the dream's broken. I shall surrender the farm at once and go to America. I've got capital that'll start me anywhere, and I'm not afraid of work. I've old friends out there, too. My first cousin, Jim Lomax, and his wife. They went out 5 years ago, and have been doing wonders with a farm in New England. I shan't feel quite strange there. Go to America, John, and never come back, Susan said despondently. She had sincere regard for this honest yeoman, and was grieved to the heart at the thought of the sorrow that had come to him through his unfortunate desire to be something more to her than a friend. Never's a long word, Susie, he answered, in his serious, straightforward way. Perhaps when a good many years have gone over all our heads, and when your children are beginning to grow up, I may come back and take my seat beside your hearth and smoke my pipe with your husband. Not that I should ever cease to love you, my dear. But time would take the sting out of the old pain, and it would be only a kind of placid sorrow, like the thought of one that's long been dead. Yes, I shall come back to England after 10 or 15 years if I live, if it's only for the sake of seeing your children. and I'll wager there'll be one amongst them that'll take to me almost as if it was my own, and will come to be like a child to me in my old age. I've seen such things. And now I must say goodbye, Susie, for I've got to be uptown at 3 o'clock to see Mr. Valere, and I have a deal of work to do before I leave. Shall you go soon, John? As soon as ever I can get things settled. The farm off my hands and so on. But I shall come to say goodbye to you and your father before I go. Of course you will, John. It would be unfriendly to go without seeing father. Goodbye. They shook hands once more and parted. The yeoman walked slowly along the garden path and across a patch of furze-grown common land, on the other side of which there was a straggling wood of some extent, broken up here and there by disused gravel pits and pools of stagnant water, a wild kind of place to pass at night, yet considered safe enough by the country people about Hillborough, as there was scarcely any part of it that was not within earshot of the high road. The narrow footpath across this wood was a shortcut between Matthew Lorton's farm and Hillborough, and John Granger took it. He walked with a firm step and an upright bearing. Though his heart was heavy, he went townwards that afternoon. He was a man to bear his trouble in a manly spirit, whatever it might be, and there were no traces of his disappointment in his looks or manner when he presented himself at the lawyer's house. Mr. Valere had a client with him, so John Granger was ushered into the clerk's office, where he found Stephen Price hard at work at a desk, in company with a smaller and younger clerk. "Good afternoon, Granger," he said, in a cool, patronizing manner that John Granger hated. "Come about your lease, of course." "There is nothing else for me to come about." "Ah, you see, you're one of those lucky fellows who never want the help of the law to get you out of a scrape. And you're a devilish lucky fellow, too, in the matter of this lease. If you can get Friar's Gate for a new term at the rent you've been paying hitherto, as I dare say you will, if you play your cards cleverishly with our governor presently—" "I'm not going to ask for a new lease," answered John Granger. "I'm going to leave Friar's Gate." "Going to leave Friar's Gate? You astound me. Have you got a better farm in your eye?" "I'm going to America." Stephen Price gave an expression to his astonishment by a prolonged whistle, and then twisted himself round upon his stool the better to regard Mr. Granger. "Why, Granger, how's this?" he asked. "A fellow like you, with plenty of money, going off to America? I thought that was the refuge for the destitute." "I'm tired of England, and I've a fancy for change. I hear that a man may do very well in America with a good knowledge of farming and a tidy bit of capital." "Ah, you've got that," said Stephen Price with an envious sigh. "And so you're thinking of going to America? It's very strange. I used to fancy you were sweet upon a certain pretty cousin of mine. I've seen you hanging about old Lorton's place a good deal of late years." John Granger did not reply to this remark. Mr. Valere's client departed a few minutes later, and Mr. Granger was asked to step into the lawyer's office. He found his business very easy to arrange in the manner he wished. Mr. Valere had received more than one offer for the Friar's Gate farm, and there was an applicant who would be glad to get the place as soon as John Granger could relinquish it, without waiting for the expiration of his lease. This incoming tenant would no doubt be willing to take his furniture and live and dead stock at valuation, Mr. Valere told John, So the young farmer left the office in tolerable spirits, pleased to find there were no obstacles to his speedy departure from a home that had once been dear to him. Chapter 2. John Granger's preparations and arrangements, the disposal of his property, and the getting together of this simple outfit occupied little more than 3 weeks. And it was still bright midsummer weather when he took his last walk round the pastures of Friar's Gate, and for the first time since he had resolved to leave those familiar scenes, realized how great a hold they had upon his heart. "It'll be dreary work in a strange country," he thought, as he leaned upon a gate, looking at the lazy cattle which were no longer his, and wondering whether they would miss him when he was gone. "And what pleasure can I ever take in trying to get rich? Who I have no one to work for, no one to take pride in my success. Perhaps it would have been better to stay here, even though I had to hear her wedding bells some fine summer morning, and see her leaning on Robert Ashley's arm, looking up in his face as I used to fancy she would look up to me in all the years to come. Oh, God, how I wish I was dead. What an easy end that would make of everything." He thought of the men and women who had died of fever last autumn round Hillborough, people who had wished to live, for whom life was full of duties and household joys, whose loss left wide gaps among their kindred, not to be filled again upon this earth. If death would come to him, what a glad release! It was not that he suffered from any keen or violent agony. It was the dull blankness of his existence which he felt, an utter emptiness and hopelessness, nothing to live for in the present, nothing to look forward to in the future. This was the last day. His 3 great sea chests containing his clothes, books, and other property which he could not bring himself to part with had gone on to London by that morning's luggage train. He had arranged to follow himself by the night mail which left Hillborough station at 9:30, and would be in London at 2:00 the next morning. At the last he had been seized with a fancy for prolonging his time to the uttermost, and it was for this reason he had chosen the latest train by which he could leave Hillborough. He had a good many people to take leave of, and it was rather trying work. He had always been liked and respected, and on this last day it surprised him to find how fond the people were of him, and how general was the regret caused by his departure. Little children clung about his knees, matronly eyes were dried in lavender cotton aprons, pretty girls offered blushingly to kiss him at parting. Stalwart young fellows, his companions of old, declared they would never have a friend they could trust and honor as they had trusted and honored him. It touched the poor fellow to the heart to find himself so much beloved, and he was going to sacrifice all this because he could not endure to live in the old home now his dream was broken. He had put off his visit to Matthew Lorton's house to the very last. His latest moments at Hillborough should be given to Susan, he told himself. He would drain to the last drop the cup of that sweet, sad parting. His last memory of English soil should be on her bright, tender face, looking at him compassionately, as she had looked the day she broke his heart. It was 7:30 when he went in at the little garden gate. A warm summer evening, the rustic garden steeped in the low western sunshine, the birds singing loud in hawthorn and sycamore, a peaceful vesper, calm upon all things. John Granger had been expected. He could see that at a glance. The best tea things were set out in the best parlor, and Mr. Lorton and his daughter were waiting tea for him. There was a great bunch of roses on the table, and Susan was dressed in light blue muslin with a rose in her bosom. He thought how often in the dreary time to come she would arise before him like a picture, with the sunshine flickering about her bright hair and the red rose at her breast. She was very sweet to him that evening, tender and gentle and clinging, as she might have been with a fondly loved brother who was leaving her forever. The farmer asked him about his plans, and gave his approval of them heartily. It was well for a sturdy fellow with a bit of money to push his way in a new country, where he might make 50% upon his capital, instead of dawdling on in England, where it was quite as much as a man could do to make both ends meet at the close of a year's hard work. "My little Susie is going to be married to young Bob Ashley," Mr. Lorton said by and by. "He asked her last Tuesday was a week, but they've been courting in a kind of way this last 12-month. I couldn't well say no, for Bob's father and I have been friends for many a year, and the young man's a decent chap enough. He's going to rent that little dairy farm from Sir Marmaduke Halliday's on the other side of Hillborough Road. Old Ashley has promised to stock it for him, and he hopes to do well. It isn't much of a match for my girl, you know, John, but the young people may have made up their minds, so it's no use setting my face against it." They had been sitting at the tea-table nearly half an hour when the sunny window was suddenly darkened by the apparition of Mr. Stephen Price, looking in upon them in an easy, familiar manner, with his folded arms upon the sill. "Good evening, Uncle Lorton," he said. "Good evening, Susie. How do you do, Granger? I didn't know there was going to be a tea party, or I shouldn't have come." "This isn't a tea party," answered Susan. "It is only John Granger who has come to bid us good-bye, and we are very, very sorry he is going away." "Oh, we are we?" said the lawyer's clerk with a sneer. "What would Bob Ashley say to that, I wonder?" "Come in, Steph, and don't be a fool," growled the old man. Mr. Price came in and took his seat at the tea-table. He was flashily dressed, wore his hair long, and had a good deal of whisker, which he was perpetually caressing with a hand of doubtful cleanliness, whereon the inky evidence of his day's work was unpleasantly obvious. He did not care much for such womanish refreshment as tea, which he denounced in a weeping manner as catlap. But he took a cup from his cousin nevertheless, and joined freely in the conversation while he drank it. He asked John Granger a good many questions about his plans, whether he meant to buy land, and when, and where, and a great deal more in the same way, to all of which John replied as shortly as was consistent with the coldest civility. "Take all your capital with you, of course?" asked Stephen Price. "No, I take none of my capital with me." "Why, hang it all, man, you must take some money." "I take the money I received for my furniture and stock." "Ah, to be sure. You came into the office yesterday afternoon to receive it. Over £600, wasn't it? I drew up the agreement between you and the new man, so I ought to know." "It was over £600. "And you take that with you? Quite enough to start with, of course. And the rest of your money is as safe as houses in old Lawler's bank. No fear of any smash there. I wish I was going with you, Granger. I'm heartily sick of Hillborough. I shall cut old Valaire's office before long, come what may. I can't stand it much longer. I've got a friend on the lookout for a berth for me up in London. and I directly hear of anything, I shall turn my back upon this dismal old hole. You'll have to pay your debts before you do that, I should think, Steph, his uncle remarked bluntly. Stephen Price shrugged his shoulders and pushed his teacup away with a listless air. He got up presently and lounged out of the house, after a brief good evening to all. He made no attempt to take leave of John Granger, and seemed in his careless way to have forgotten that he was parting with him for the last time. No one tried to detain him. They seemed to breathe more freely when he was gone. John and Susan wandered out into the garden after tea, while the farmer smoked his pipe by the open window. The sun was low by this time, and the western sky flooded with rosy light. The garden was all abloom with roses and honeysuckle. John Granger fancied he should never look upon such flowers or such a garden again. They walked up and down the narrow path once or twice, almost in silence, and then Susan began to tell him how much she regretted his departure. "I don't know how it is, John," she said, "but I feel tonight as if I would give all the world to keep you here. I cannot tell you how sorry I am you're going. Oh, John, I wish with all my heart I could have been what you asked me to be. I wish I could have put aside all thoughts of Robert." "Could you have done that, Susan? Could you have done that, Susan?" he cried with sudden energy. His fate trembled upon a breath in that moment. A word from Susan, and he would have stayed. A word from her, and he never would have taken the path across the common and through the wood to Hillborough on that fair summer evening. He was her valued friend of many years, dearer to her than she had known until that moment. It seemed to her all at once that she had thrown away the gold and had chosen not dross, but something less precious than unalloyed gold. It was too late now for any change. "I have promised Robert to be his wife," she said. "But, oh, John, I wish you were not going away." "My dear love, I could not trust myself to stay here. I love you too much for that. But I will come back when I am a sober, elderly man, and ask for a corner beside your hearth." "Promise me that. And you will write to me from America, won't you, John? I shall be so anxious, and Father, too, to know you are safe and well." "Yes, my dear. I will write." "What is the name of the steamer you are to go on?" "The Washington, bound for New York." "I shall not forget that. The Washington." John Granger looked at his watch. The sun had gone down, and there was a long line of crimson yonder in the west above the edge of the brown furze-grown common. Beyond it the wood dipped down, and the tops of the trees made a black line against the red light. Above, the sky was one of pale, tender green, with stars faintly shining here and there. "What a lovely night," said Susan. John Granger sighed as he looked at that peaceful landscape. "I did not know how much I loved this place and all belonging to it, he said. "Good night, Susie. Good night, and goodbye." "Won't you kiss me the last time, John?" she said shyly. She scarcely knew what she had asked. He took her in his arms, strained her to his breast, and pressed one passionate, despairing kiss upon her brow. It was the first and last in his life. "Time's up, Susie," he said, gently releasing her. He went to the window, shook hands with the farmer, and took leave of him in that quiet, undemonstrative way which means a good deal with a man of John Granger's mold. A minute more, and he was gone. Susan stood at the garden gate, watching the tall, dark figure crossing the common. Twice he turned and waved his hand to her. The last time upon the edge of the common, before he took the path down to the wood. After this night, the still twilight hour seldom came without bringing the thought of him to Susan Lorton. It seemed to grow dark all at once when he was gone, and the house had a dreary look to Susan when she went indoors. What was it that made her shiver as she crossed the threshold? Some nameless, shapeless fancy shook her with a sudden fear. Her father had strolled out to the garden through the wide-open back door. The house seemed quite empty, and the faint sound of the summer wind sighing in the parlor chimney was like the lamentation of a human creature in pain. Chapter 3. The summer passed, and in the late autumn came Susan's wedding day. She was very fond of her good-looking, generous-hearted young suitor, and yet, even on the eve of her marriage, her heart had turned a little regretfully towards absent John Granger. She was not a coquette to glory in the mischief her beauty had done. It seemed to her a terrible thing that a good man should have been driven from his home for love of her. She had thought of him a great deal since that summer night upon which he had looked back at her on the verge of the Hawley Wood, all the more because no letter had come from him yet, and she was beginning to be a little anxious about his safety. She thought of him still more by and by as the winter months passed without bringing the promised letter. Her husband made light of her fears, telling her that John Granger would find plenty to do in a new country without wasting his time in scribbling letters to old friends. But this did not convince Susan. "He promised to write, Robert," she said. "John Granger is not the man to break his promise." Susan was very happy in her new home, and Robert Ashley declared he had the handiest, brightest, and the most industrious wife in all Woodlandshire, to say nothing of her being the prettiest. She had been used to keeping her father's house since her early girlhood, and her matronly duties came very easy to her. The snug little farmhouse with its neat furniture and fresh dimity draperies was the prettiest thing possible in the way of rustic interiors. The Dutch tiled dairy was like a temple dedicated to some pastoral divinity, and Susan took a natural womanly pride in this bright home. She had come from as good a house, but then this was quite her own, and young Robert Ashley was a more romantic figure in the foreground of the picture than her good humdrum old father. Stephen Price did not stay at Hillborough long enough to see his cousin's wedding. He left Mr. Valaire's employment about 3 weeks after John Granger's departure, and left without giving his employer any notice of his intention. He went away from Hillborough as deeply in debt as it was practicable for a young man in his position to be, and the tradesmen to whom he owed money were loud in their complaints about him. He was known to have gone to London, and there were some attempts made to discover his whereabouts, But in that mighty metropolis it was no easy thing to find an obscure lawyer's clerk, and nothing resulted from the endeavors of his angry creditors except the mortification of defeat, which made them still more angry. No one except those to whom he owed money cared what had become of him. He had been considered pleasant company in a tavern parlour, and his manners and dress had been copied by some aspiring clerks and apprentices in Hillborough, but he had never been known to do anyone a kindness, and his disappearance left no empty place in any heart. The new year came, and still there was no letter from John Granger. But early in January, Robert Ashley came home from Hillborough Market one afternoon and told his wife she needn't worry herself about her old friend any longer. "John Granger's safe enough, my lass," he said. "I was talking to Simmons, the cashier at Lawler's Bank, this morning, and he told me that Granger wrote to them for £1,000 last November from New York, and he has written 500 more since then. He is buying land somewhere. I forget the name of the place, and he's well and hearty, Simmons tells me." Susan clapped her hands joyfully. "Oh, Robert, how glad I am!" she cried. "It isn't kind of John to have forgotten his promise, but I don't care about that as long as he's safe." "I don't know why you should ever take it into your head that there was anything amiss with him," said Robert Ashley, who did not regard John Granger's exile from a sentimental point of view. "Well, I'm afraid I'm rather fanciful, Bob, but I could never explain to you what a strange feeling came over me the night John Granger went away from Hillborough. It was after I had said good-bye to him and had gone back into the house, where all was dark and quiet. I sat in the parlour thinking of him, and it seemed as if a voice was saying in my ear that neither I nor anyone that cared for him would ever see John Granger again. There wasn't any such voice, of course, you know, Robert, but it seemed like that in my mind, and whenever I've thought of poor John Granger since that time, it seemed to me like thinking of the dead. Even often and often I've said to myself, 'Why, Susan, you foolish thing, you ought to know that he's safe enough in America. Ill news travels fast, and if there'd be anything wrong, we should have heard of it, somehow.' But reason with myself as I would, I have never been able to feel comfortable about him. Thank God for your news, Robert, and thank you for bringing it to me." She raised herself on tiptoe to kiss her husband, who looked down at her in a fond, protecting way from the height of his own wisdom. "Why, Susie, what a timid, nervous little puss you are," he said. "I should have been getting jealous of John Granger by this time if I'd known you thought so much of him." The winter days lengthened and melted into early spring. It was bright March weather, and Susan had an hour of daylight after tea for her needlework, while Robert attended to his evening duties out of doors. They had fires still, though the days were very mild, and Susan used to sit at the open window with a jug of primroses on the wide wooden ledge before her, executing some dainty little repairs upon her husband's shirts. One evening Robert Ashley was out later than usual, and when it had grown too dark for her to work any longer, Susan sat with her hands lying idle in her lap, thinking of her wedded life, and the years that had gone before it, years that she could never recall without the image of John Granger, who had been in a manner mixed up with all her girlish days. It had been very unkind of him to not to write. It seemed as if his love for her could not have been very much at all, or he would have pleased to comply with her request. She could not forgive him for his neglect, glad as she was to know that he was safe. The room was rather a large one, an old-fashioned room with a low ceiling crossed by heavy beams, half parlor, half kitchen, and with a wide open fireplace at one end, on which the logs had burnt to a dullish red just now, only brightening up with a faint flash of light now and then. The old chintz-covered armchair in which Robert Ashley was wont to smoke his evening pipe stood by the hearth ready for him. Susan had been sitting with her face towards the open window, looking absently out at the garden, where daffodils and early primroses glimmered through the dusk. It was only the striking of the 8-day clock in the corner that roused her from her reverie. She stooped to pick up her work, which had fallen to the ground. She was standing, folding this in a leisurely way, when she looked towards the fireplace and gave a little start at seeing that her husband's armchair was no longer empty. "Why, Robert!" she cried. "How quietly you must have come into the place. I never heard you." There was no answer, and her voice sounded strange to her in the empty room. "Robert!" she repeated, a little louder, but the figure in the chair neither answered nor stirred. And then suddenly fright seized her, and she knew that it was not her husband. The room was almost dark. It was quite impossible that she could see the face of that dark figure seated in the armchair, with the shoulders bent a little over the fire. Yet she knew, as well as ever she had known anything in her life, that it was not Robert Ashley. She went slowly towards the fireplace and stood within a few paces of that strange figure. A little flash of light shot up from the smoldering logs and shone for an instant on the face. It was John Granger. Susan Ashley tried to speak to him, but the words would not come, and yet it was hardly so appalling a thing to see him there that she need have felt what she did. England is not so far from America that a man may not cross the sea and drop in upon his friends unexpectedly. The logs fell together with a crashing noise and broke into a ruddy flame, lighting up the whole room. The chair was empty. Susan uttered a loud cry, and almost at the same time Robert Ashley came in at the door. "Why, Susie!" he exclaimed. "What's amiss, lass?" She ran to him and took shelter in his arms, sobbing hysterically, and then, calming herself with an effort, told him how she had seen John Granger's ghost. Robert laughed at her to scorn. "Why, my pet, what fancies will you be having next? Granger is safe enough over in Yankee land. It was some shadow that took the shape of your old friend to your fancy. It's easy enough to fancy such a thing when your mind's full of anyone." There's no use in saying that, Robert," she answered resolutely. "It was no fancy. John Granger is dead, and I have seen his ghost." "He wasn't dead on the 10th of last December, anyhow. They had a letter from him at Lawler's Bank, dated that day. Simmons told me so." Susan shook her head mournfully. "I have a feeling that he never got to America alive, Robert," she said. "I can't explain how it is, but I have a feeling that it was so." "Dead men don't write letters, Susie, or send for their money out of the bank." "Someone else might write letters." "Nonsense, lass. They know John Granger's handwriting and signature well enough at the bank, depend on it. It would be no easy matter to deceive them, but I'll look in upon Simmons tomorrow. He and I are uncommonly friendly, you know, and there's nothing he wouldn't do to oblige me, in a reasonable way. I'll ask him if there have been any more letters from the Granger, and get him to give me the address." Susan did not say much more about that awful figure in the armchair. It was no use trying to convince her husband that the thing which he had seen was anything more than a creation of her own brain. She was very quiet all the rest of the evening, though she tried her uttermost to appear as if nothing had happened. Robert Ashley saw Mr. Simmons, the cashier, the next day, and came back to his wife elated by the result of his inquiries. John Granger had written for another £500 by the very last post from America, and reported himself well and thriving. He was still in New York, and Mr. Simmons had given Robert Ashley his address in that city. Oh, thank you, Patty Lou. I appreciate that. Susan wrote to her old friend that very afternoon, telling him that she had seen and begging him to write and set her mind at ease. After all, it was very consoling to hear what she had heard from her husband, and she tried to convince herself that the thing she had seen was only a trick of her imagination. Another month went by, and again in the twilight the same figure appeared to her. It was standing this time, with one arm leaning on the high mantelpiece, standing facing her as she came back to the room, after having quitted it for a few minutes for some light household duty. There was a better fire and more light in the room than there had been before. The logs were burning with a steady blaze that lit up the well-known figure and unforgotten face. John Granger was looking at her with an expression that seemed half reproachful, half beseeching. He was very pale, much paler than she had ever seen him in life, and as she looked, she standing just within the threshold of the door, she saw him lift his hand slowly and point to his forehead. The firelight showed her a dark red stain upon the left temple, like the mark of a contused wound. She covered her face with her hands, shuddering and uttering a little cry of terror, and then dropped half fainting upon the chair. When she uncovered her face, the room was empty. The firelight shining cheerily upon the walls, no trace of that ghostly visitant. Again, when her husband came in, she told him of what she had seen for the first time that night. He heard her very gravely. This repetition of the business made it serious. If it were, as Robert Ashley fully believed it was, a delusion of his wife's, it was a dangerous delusion, and he knew not how to charm it away from her mind. She had conjured up a new fancy now, this notion of a blood-stained temple, the ghastly evidence of some foul play that had been done to John Granger. And the man was alive and well in America all the time, but how convince a woman of that fact when she preferred to trust her own sick fancies? This time, Susan Ashley brooded over the thoughts of the thing she had seen, firmly believing that she had looked upon the shadow of the dead, and that there was some purpose to be fulfilled by that awful vision. In the day, however busy she might be with her daily work, the thought of this was almost always in her mind. In the dead silence of the night, when her husband was sleeping by her side, she would often lie awake for hours thinking of John Granger. No answer had come to her letter, though there had been more than time for her to receive one. "Robert," she said to her husband one day, "I do not believe that John Granger ever went to America." "Oh, Susie, I wish you could get John Granger out of your head. Who is it that writes for his money if it isn't he?" "Anybody might know of the money. People know everything about their neighbors' affairs in Hillborough, and anybody that knew John Granger's hand might be able to forge a letter. I don't believe he ever went to America, Robert. I believe some accident, some fatal accident happened to him on the night he was to leave Hillborough. Why, Susie, what should happen to him and we not hear of it? He might have been waylaid and murdered. He had a good deal of money about him. I know that night he was to sail from London to Washington by the Washington, and his luggage was all sent to an inn near the docks. I wish you'd write to the People, Robert, and ask if he arrived there at the time he was expected. And I wish you'd find out at the station whether anyone saw him go away by the train that night. It's easy enough to do as much as that to please you, Susie, but I wish you wouldn't dwell upon these fancies about Granger. It's all nonsense, as you'll find out sooner or later. He wrote the letter which his life wanted written, asking the landlord of the Victoria Hotel, London Docks, whether a certain Mr. John Granger, whose travelling chests had been forwarded from Hillborough, had arrived at his house on the 24th of July last, and when and how he had quitted it. He also took the trouble to go to the Hillborough station in order to question the station master and his subordinates about John Granger's departure. Neither the station master nor the porters were able to give Robert Ashley any satisfactory information on this point. One or two of the men were not quite clear that they knew John Granger by sight. Another knew him very well indeed, but could not swear to having seen him that night. The station master was quite clear that he had not seen him. "I'm generally pretty busy with the mail bags at that time," he said, "and a passenger might very well escape my notice, but it would only have been civil in Granger to bid me good-bye. I've known him ever since he was a lad." This was not a satisfactory account to carry back to Susan, nor was the letter that came from London in a day or two much more satisfactory. The landlord of the Victoria Hotel begged to inform Mr. Ashley that the owner of the trunks from Hillborough had not arrived at his house until the middle of August. He was not quite sure about the date, but he knew the luggage had been lying in his place for something over 3 weeks, and he was thinking of advertising when the owner appeared. 3 weeks! And John Granger had left Susan Lorton that July night, intending to go straight to London. Where could he have been? What could he have been doing in that interval? Robert Ashley tried to make light of the matter. Granger might have changed his mind at the last moment, at the railway station perhaps, and might have gone off to visit friends in some other part of the country. But Susan told her husband that John Granger had no friends except in Hillborough, and that he was not given to changing his mind upon any occasion. She had now settled conviction that some untimely fate had befallen her old friend, and that the letters from America were forgeries. Ashley told his friend Simmons the story of the ghost rather reluctantly, but it was necessary to tell it in explaining how the letter to the London hotel-keeper had come to be written. Of course, Mr. Simmons was quite ready to agree with him that the ghostly part of the business was no more than a delusion of Susan's, but he was a good deal puzzled, not to say disturbed, by the hotel-keeper's letter. He had talked over John Granger's plans with him on that last day, and he remembered that John had been perfectly decided in his intention of going straight to London. The 3 weeks' interval between his departure from Hillborough and his arrival in that city was a mystery not easily to be explained. Oh, I think we know where this is going. Mr. Simmons referred to the letters from New York and compared the signatures of them with previous signatures of John Granger's. If they were forgeries, they were very clever forgeries. But Granger's was a plain commercial hand by no means difficult to imitate. There was one thing noticeable in the signatures to the American letters. They were all exactly alike, line for line and curve for curve. This rather discomposed Mr. Simmons, for it was a notorious fact that a man rarely signs his name twice in exactly the same manner. There is almost always some difference. "I'm going up to London in a month," said the cashier. "I'll call at the Victoria Hotel when I'm there and make a few inquiries about John Granger. We can make some excuse for keeping back the money in the meantime, if there should be any more written for." Before the month was out, John Granger's ghost appeared for a third time to Susan Ashley. She had been to Hillborough alone to make some little purchases in the way of linen drapery, and came home through Hawley Wood in the tender May twilight. She was thinking of her old friend as she walked along the shadowy, winding footpath. It was just such a still, peaceful evening as that upon which she had stood on the edge of the common, looking back at her and waving his hand upon that last well-remembered night. He was so much in her thoughts, and the conviction that he had come from among the dead to visit her was so rooted in her mind that she was scarcely surprised when she looked up presently and saw a tall, familiar figure moving slowly among the trees a little way before her. There seemed to be an awful stillness in the woods all at once, but there was nothing awful in that well-known figure. She tried to overtake it, but it kept always in advance of her, and at a sudden turn in the path she lost it altogether. The trees grew thicker, and there was a solemn darkness at the spot where the path took this sharp turn, and on one side of the narrow footpath there was a steep declivity and a great hollow made by a disused gravel pit. She went home quietly enough with a subdued sadness upon her, and told her husband what had happened to her. Nor did she rest until there had been a search made in Hawley Wood for the body of John Granger. They searched, and found him lying at the bottom of the gravel pit, half buried in loose sand and gravel, and quite hidden by a mass of furze and bramble that grew over the spot. There was an inquest, of course. The tailor who had made the clothes found upon the body and identified them and swore to them as those he had made for John Granger. The pockets were all empty. There could be little doubt that John Granger had been waylaid and murdered for the sake of the money he carried upon him that night. His skull had been shattered by a blow from a jagged stick on the left temple. The stick was found lying at the bottom of the pit a little way from the body, with human hair and stains of blood upon it. John Granger had never left Hillborough, and the person who had contrived to procure so much of his money by sending the deposit receipts and forged letters from America was in all probability his murderer. There was a large reward offered for the discovery of the guilty party. The police were hard at work, and the inquest was adjourned several times in the hope that new facts might be elicited. Susan Ashley and her father were examined closely as to the events of that fatal evening of July 24th. Susan told everything she could. Her cousin, Stephen Price, dropping in while they were at tea, the questions and answers about the money John Granger carried upon him to the most minute particular. "Then Price knew of the money Granger had about him?" suggested the coroner. "He did, sir." "And he knew that he had money on deposit in Hillborough Bank?" "Yes, sir." "Did Price leave your father's house after Granger or before him?" "Before him, sir. Nearly an hour before him." The inquest was adjourned, and within a week of this examination, Matthew Lorton received an application from the police asking for a photograph of his nephew, Stephen Price, if he happened to possess such a thing. He did possess one, and sent it to London by return of post. The landlord of the Victoria Hotel identified this portrait as that of the person who represented himself to be John Granger and who carried away John Granger's luggage. After this, the work was easy. Little links in the chain were picked up one by one. A laboring man turned up who had seen Stephen Price sitting in a stile hard by Hollywood, hacking at a thick, jagged-looking steak with his clasp knife on the night of the 24th of July. The woman at whose house Price lodged gave evidence that he broke an appointment to play billiards with a friend of his on that night. The friend had called at his lodgings for him twice and had been angry about the breaking of the appointment. And Stephen Price came in about 10:30 looking very white and strange. The lad who was his fellow clerk was ready to swear to his having been disturbed and strange in his manner during the 2 or 3 weeks before he left Hillborough. But the boy had thought very little of this, he said, knowing how deeply Stephen was in debt. The final examination resulted in a verdict of willful murder, and a police officer started for New York by the next steamer carrying a warrant for the apprehension of Stephen Price. He was not found very easily, but was ultimately apprehended with some of John Granger's property still in his possession. He was brought home, tried, found guilty, and hung, much to the satisfaction of Hillborough. Shortly afterwards, Mr. Volaire produced a will which John Granger had executed a few days before his intended departure, bequeathing all he possessed to Susan Lorton, the interest for her sole use and benefit, the principal to revert to her eldest son after her death, the son to take the name of Granger. The bank had to make good the money drawn from them by Stephen Price. The boy came in due course, and was christened after the dead man, above whose remains a fair white monument has been erected in the rustic churchyard near Hollywood, at the expense of Robert and Susan Ashley. A handsomer tomb than this then is usually given to a man of John Granger's class, but it was the only thing Susan could do to show how much she had valued him who had loved her so dearly. She often sits beside that quiet resting place in the spring twilight, with her children busy making daisy chains at her knee, but she has never seen John Granger's ghost since that evening in the wood, and she knows she will never see it again. Alrighty then. So what did you guys think of that one? Of course we knew who it was. Yeah, when I was picking stories for this particular live, I kind of just, I don't know, I think you guys know me well enough to know by now that I'm a sucker for a tragic love story. And when I was looking through and I found these, and they were both by the same author, and I was like, okay, and I love featuring early, especially like Victorian era female authors, because you hear about Mary Shelley and you just kind of want to be like, okay, let's feature some other ones, and there's some really wonderful Victorian authors, female authors, who were working in genres that really were not, they were not heavy women genres. I mean, they're all still to this day dominated by men, but they started it all. And some of the best early ghost stories were written by women. Um, so yeah, so it's always fun to, and she's an author that you don't hear about. So and I've said this before, but one of the things that I love doing is being able to bring you guys stories by authors that you've never heard of, stories that you've never read, and share them with you. So, well, it is 11:11. Jane Eyre is wonderful. The Bronte sisters, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, all really wonderful, wonderful authors. So, let's see. Okay. I do not teach. I do not teach English. I am not a teacher. I have a long time ago. I actually considered becoming a kindergarten teacher for a long time. But my drive was not there to go to school at that point. And we're talking 30 years ago. But thank you. One of the things and I've talked about this before, but one of the things I would love to do is actually read to school children, elementary school, even hell up to high school kids. I think they could benefit from being read to, and going to libraries and stuff. I would love to do like a library tour type of thing. I'd love to do. Oh, thank you, River. I appreciate that. John Steinbeck was wonderful. Yeah. One of the things that when I do finally am able to take this on the road and do live streams from different places, one of the things I would love to do when I do that would be to do library readings in each of the cities that I stop in, which I think would be wonderful. East of Eden is a wonderful book. Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually now that I'm hopefully going to have. I do have a YouTube channel. It's same username. All of my live shows are archived over there. Plus, I have some fully produced audiobooks of public domain stories that I've read. A couple of H.P. Lovecraft, Ambrose Bierce. There's going to be more stuff coming. All of my poetry readings are up there. And some of my original stuff is up there as well. So, yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you, Sandy's Mama. I appreciate it. Anybody, if you want to follow me over on YouTube, go freely do that. I don't really care that TikTok doesn't like it because TikTok doesn't seem to be wanting to do me any favors lately. So guess what? If I happen to send people off platform, that's their problem, not mine. No, I'm not bitter at all. Anyway, that's where we'll leave our stories for tonight. Two very different kinds of ghosts and two very different kinds of love. One clings because it was betrayed. The other returns because something unfinished still needs to be made right. Thank you, Tashana. I appreciate that very much. Because you know what? YouTube pays better in the long run, and their memberships are better. So if you guys decide to be members over there, it's better over there than it is here. Believe me. But I have to get to a certain threshold in order to be eligible to do that. But there's a lot more stuff I can do over there that I can't do here. So anyway, let's see. Maybe that is what gives these stories their power. Not simply the idea that the dead might return, but that love, regret, and memory can outlast the people who carry them. Thank you all for spending a little time with me around the fire tonight, even when I was ranting and complaining like a madman. yeah, with all the frustrations, but we'll get there. If you enjoy these stories and would like to support what I do, please consider becoming a super fan, or as we call them here, super goblins, and or going over to the Undead Papa Mercantile, which the link is in my bio, and purchasing some official Storytime merchandise. Join me on Sunday night as we begin a 4-night journey through The Giver by Lois Lowry. Well, yeah, it's been a night, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yay, I'm glad you found me. Yeah, so until Sunday, please be kind to each other and be kind to yourself, because kindness matters, and so do you. Good night, everybody. Name on YouTube is Undead Papa. I am Undead Papa wherever you may find me. All right. Good night, everybody. I'll see you on Sunday. Have a great weekend. Oh, thank you, Rosie.